We'll now move swiftly on to a session building on what Anusha was talking about around coalition building that Topy and I are facilitating together, and Topy's going to introduce the session.
Yeah. Yeah, hi, thank you, Anush. That was brilliant and such a good lead into what we're trying to do now, which is like, how do we actually build a movement, especially in the Scottish context, but also linking to PHM Global and linking, like you said, local issues and problems to a policy level and an international solidarity movement. So why do we think we need a coalition for health? I think this has been covered in nearly every talk so far for the last 2 days, which has been, yeah, really, really good background for this. And what we think, what we're feeling in our work is that the health movement in Scotland and globally is still fragmented, and people are doing lots of projects that overlap with each other, and work gets repeated and it's not as powerful as it could be. So we want to try and form, a movement for health in Scotland. The clue is in the name, and a Scotland-wide coalition around that. And I think, something that's really, really important is, that multiple different issues come up when you're thinking about health, and we don't know which doors we can push on. We don't know which doors are ajar. Like Alison was saying in her talk yesterday, there's gaps in lots of different areas that we can use to build this movement, and it's not just going to be in healthcare or in the organisation that we're working in, but stuff that you don't expect, like land struggles, like infrastructure and skill sharing, these kind of things. So we want to think about how we systematize the movement and become more than the sum of our parts, I guess. So we're going to do a bit of an exercise around that. The first half of it is going to be just some written reflections, so kind of thinking about your personal positionality and your organisation. And the second half, we're going to come into groups to think about how we can start building a coalition, what we need from each other, and how to take it forwards, and what the role of PHM Scotland in that could be. So yeah, the first bit, we've got some post-it notes on the table. Can you just kind of to yourselves, just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, write down on a yellow one your organisation that you're representing here, or the main one you work with, and then add on to that same post-it note any networks of coalitions that your organisation is connected to currently, or that you're trying to be connected with. So the idea of this is that we're going to gather them all into a map at the end, so we can know who was here, what the connections already are, and start sort of building a coalition. Even if you're not based in Scotland, it'll be really good to know where you're at, and so we can build a map of like our connections to other countries as well. Yeah, and then you've also got orange post-it notes and green post-it notes there. So on these, I want you to think about what barriers, on the orange ones, write down what barriers you've experienced in collaborating with other groups, in forming coalitions, in having the capacity for that. There's some sort of prompt categories at the bottom right here, if you're struggling with what to think about. And then on the green ones, any enablers of those collaborations and coalitions that have helped you in your experience in your organisation. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so yeah, just 5-10 minutes, just scribbling those things down and having a think. And then, okay, so we're going to get into groups and talk about actual things we need from a coalition, what we might need from each other, and what we might need from PHM. We want to do this in a way that we're getting people sitting together that haven't necessarily spoken so far, or aren't working on a similar theme, because there's quite a few different themes of work in the room. And we grouped them into 4 rough categories. These obviously won't capture everyone's interests, and obviously we're all interested in multiple things, but the point here is just to get a bit of randomness to it. So you've got more name tags on each table. Can you write on one name tag for yourself which theme you feel that most of your work fits under, or your main interest fits under. So the 4 themes are healthcare or informal care under that. Commercial determinants of health, so public pharma, like we were talking about yesterday, and like the wider structural determinants of health. Environment and land, or poverty and inequality. And we're going to find a table in a minute. We're going to do, what's it, 6? How many tables was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think. How many people are there? There's about 30, is it?
Yeah. How many people are we doing? I think you got it. What was it, people? 8 tables of 5? Yeah. So you can get into groups of roughly 5 on each table, and try and match with people that are working under a different theme as much as possible, just so there's a mix on each table. Obviously, it's not going to be, maybe there might be more people in other themes. Try and figure it out. So, yes, 8 tables.
So we've got into groups in a very systematic and methodical way, so that's good. So yeah, already coalition building, that's great. So we have 3 questions. Firstly, what do you want from a health coalition? That's question 1. What do you want from a health coalition? Maybe relatively briefly, just think what are the objectives? What change are we seeking to make? Secondly, how do we build a health coalition? I think that's going to take probably a bit more time, but you can maybe draw on some of the Nush's ideas and some of the discussions we've been having today and yesterday. And then thirdly, how could PHM Scotland or PHM Europe facilitate the coalition? So 3 things. What do we want? What changes are we seeking? How do we build a coalition, and how can we support that as a movement? So we have 30 minutes, I believe. Is that right, Judy? Yes. So 30 minutes. So it's now 2:35. Yeah. So we go to 3:05. So don't get stuck too much in question 1. And motor through, and we'll come back together at 3:05 for a discussion. So I think it'd be useful probably to record this on flip charts. Yeah. So we'll distribute flip charts, and maybe if somebody could scribe, that would be helpful, just so we have a bit of a record of the discussion. Time is up. So I hope you've got to a point that you're happy with. I see lots of last minute scribbling. What we thought we'd do is just go around the room, maybe taking each question in turn, and just get a flavour of your thinking and ideas, and then we could hopefully identify commonalities as we go around. So let's take that. I know certainly in our discussion, 1 merged into 2. So I know there's these are not strongly delineated questions, but why don't we start with question 1 around what do you want from a health coalition? So shall we just do a lightning feedback around the tables? Let's start with.
All our list?
Well, just number 1, question 1.
No, from all the list from question 1.
Well, just key. No, not everything. Just
No.
2 or 3 highlights.
I mean, I suspect that we're going to have a lot of commonalities.
Yes, and if we
in the group, so
yeah, that's fine.
We should be right. We should try and
Yeah.
pull it together. But
I'll start somewhere else with the question.
the first, so we fundamentally we want a coalition to have more political influence and on the media, so we get greater impact than our individual. We can as an individual organisation. We think we need a coalition to cross-fertilise ideas and information, and but connecting that is that we want to somehow shift the narrative around health from what it is at the moment to one and what determines health to one that is more focused on realising good health for all and addressing health inequalities. We've got other things, but
why don't we go around and those all seem great options. Anything to add?
Probably
Building that's accessible to join, not any extra drain on people's resources. As we said, a greater force to stand up against the state or against corporate interests. Building manufacturing capacity, addressing health at all levels beyond current healthcare practices. Kind of got a bit about structure, sort of work for focused working groups within a wider kind of assembly, democratic, shared decision-making kind of structure. Mindfulness around participation, involvement of stakeholders, policies to mitigate any kind of conflicts of interest that come up there.
Okay, brilliant. This group, anything you want to? Elected spokesperson.
Yeah, so what we talked about was mainly that it should be anti-capitalist structure. And capitalism is very much tied to neoliberalism, and that we want a decolonial approach, and that it should be a safe space with organic horizontal structures. And also that it's a people-centered approach, tied in a bit with the decolonial approach. So, yeah, we don't want any end-to-end capitalists as well. We don't want money to be chosen over people, but the other way around. And that was it.
Okay. Decolonial and anti-capitalist. That's great. You guys are fighting over the mic.
Yeah, so we discussed that we would like to agree on a base of ideals, I think you just shared, and then also build a collective narrative and knowledge out of that, so that you can do different actions, but always within the spirit of the collective, to share practices and learn from each other's, space to meet, connect and share ideas, and eventually change the world.
Thank you very much. So we're probably quite hard to come up with something new when you're fifth group, but
You'd be surprised.
you'd be surprised. Such original thinkers here.
Yeah, we were saying it's important to come together in person to share energy and support existing work that's going on. We talked about how there's often a trade-off when you try and scale up or bring multiple organizations in, you might trade off radicality, like how radical the movement is and how specific and targeted it is. So we want to have a strategic coordination of a movement that maintains that radicality. And we were saying maybe that's something about bringing single issue moments into a multi-issue movement. Like working with time-bound issues to keep the momentum of a movement going. Yeah.
Great. And finally, we have Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, what other great things can we add? So I think particularly it was around collective consciousness, essentially, kind of bringing that kind of knowledge together and sort of sharing that. And we had a really interesting discussion, I think, about vision, strategy, and tactics. So again, being able to share tactics about things that can work and how they can work or where they've failed, and kind of coalesce over that, which kind of led into some ideas about number two we can come to later.
Okay. Thank you. So lots of ideas, some distinctive ideas from the original thinkers, and some commonalities emerging. I wonder if why don't we do two the other way around? So how do we build a health coalition? Do you want to kick off? Given you there seemed to segue into question two.
Okay, we'll add.
Just to add to what Tony was saying about tactics, on each table there should be a sheet with tactics for health campaigning, and there's kind of different tiers. There wasn't enough to go around, I'm sorry to share them, but we'll email it out afterwards. It's just for reference, but just to flag that.
That's good. So question two, how do we build a health coalition? So I think we've started on some of these thinking here, but it'd be good to. This is very much about, I guess, tactics and process.
Yes, I think there was, again, like to that kind of point from Toby before, was about the sort of in-person events, but also perhaps having some kind of regular kind of web-based kind of things that people, again, from across Europe and across the world can come together and share some of that knowledge. Again, maybe different countries can host at different times, for example, to kind of have what people want to talk about. But then also, one of the things we talked quite a bit about was building a database or refreshing some of the databases that we have about what people are doing in different parts of the world. So what are the local kind of campaigns and like international and kind of global things, again, sharing that knowledge. So yeah, I think we've had something like that in PHM at one point, but again, going back and refreshing that. Maybe a simple tool like Google Maps was kind of mentioned that people can kind of pin where they are and what they're doing, and then kind of build that up into something. Again, it's keeping it active and keeping it refreshed will be kind of one of the challenges again. Yeah.
Nice. I haven't thought about this yet. So leading on from what we were saying before, I think we were saying you need a hook to build momentum, and using actions to build unity and environment. So there's like a thing of presence, like being present for other groups in the coalition and what they're working on and taking that action together. And we also said that maybe an important part of any sort of entering into any sort of coalition is coming up with actual partnership agreements between organizations, like having from the start like clear roles, responsibilities, accountability to one another, and deciding on constant forms of communication and visibility so that you're always on the same page, building a common strategy, rather than pulling apart, pulling away from each other. We also said that having common definitions and framing is really important. So like just keeping it back to basics and sort of saying like, because there's such a poor understanding of the social determinants of health, for example. So coming back to those things of like linking health, removing it from like an expert space and making it about real lived experience.
Thanks, Toby. So that idea of a common strategy is something we talked quite a bit about, but well,
Yes. Okay. So we talked about how it's important to always have the local and the people at its center, and that coalitions can form also a bridge between local action and action on different levels. That we should be aware that we are not starting from anew, that there are already many people and collectives active on the causes, and we should value them and invite them and then create a common narrative. And to be clear also on how we work, because usually there's also new people that want to join and have a lot of energy, and then we need to be clear on how you can join. To recognize synergies, because we all do like 10 we join 10 movements, each of us, and we need to find ways to work in a way that we reinforce each other rather than creating new work. Solidarity across the movements in the collective, working towards common action, and allowing and acknowledging different realities. Did you have? Yeah.
I think maybe the other thing that we started with was the idea of like just developing a platform in which different realities can exchange their point of views and present themselves. That can be a good start. And maybe there was some like practical also things of like not having these meetings. You were saying just organize meetings when they're really needed.
it's a good point about not having too many meetings. I'll have to remember that. Is it you again or one of your colleagues?
I was going to ask Mark if you wanted to share his words. It was very nice.
That's very nice. Mark's nice words will come to the fore.
Yeah, so this kind of concept of the building the coalition to find a way to shift people's paradigms, the rich and powerful, to impact on democracy. I remember saying something about the kind of getting back, linking to this kind of decolonial approach and about how do we really have common ground? Because often we can use the same language without having the same meaning. So this need to clarify, to listen, to hear, and to have that as an iterative process is key to any, true sort of democratic process, and the language, and to be aware of those who are not in the coalition. So also those that don't have a voice. So that, and we talked about any coalition needs to be aware of, post-humanist, environmental, future generations, these kind of ways of seeing the world. And I think my experience has been that we go into coalitions, we go into a kind of like a pattern of this is how we do things, so we'll need to do that, and we'll need. Whereas we can think more organically, we can shift our perspectives as long as we have our values and ethics that inform us. And I think you can see examples of this in places like Rojava and areas where they're trying to, and for us in saying it's the radical municipalism idea, the feminization of politics, understanding you cannot expect the politics that we do now to change the future because it is ingrained, those power inequalities, those power injustices are ingrained in the systems we have. So our coalitions have to be able to have a collective imagining of what might be new, what might be different, and how we make it as we go along. So that all phrased, a one world where many worlds fit, that pluriverse, that sense of something informed by something that is not here yet, but we are making ourselves as we go along. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Question 2, is back to somebody else?
Nominating you. It's very democratic. There's still one more afterwards.
How we build a health coalition. I think we were talking about how to harness existing kind of alliances and networks, which is already talked about. I think something we were discussing was how to create kind of grassroots, the people who are being impacted by what's going on the most, how to encourage their participation, create a space for dialogue, enhance listening in communities rather than a top-down approach. So education, training, placing equal value on local organising, and then kind of bringing all of that to kind of a higher national level, and how to do that sustainably.
Thank you, that's really insightful. Are you sharing the mic as well, Sue?
I'll do it.
Okay. Very good.
We agree with all the things that you already said. And another, maybe one thing is to create a moment or a place where people from different organizations can meet and agree to define project, but also be ready to support work that is not directly your main focus, that Simone translate us to be generous, tolerant, and to be ready to compromise tactically. So not on everything, but on things that we think that is important to compromise. I think that's it. And try and risk failure. Yeah. The important thing is to try, and then if we fail, at least we try and
Try again. Yeah.
Fail better.
It's a good motto. So the final question then is about what is PHM's role in facilitating, leading this coalition, which is a tricky question, but an important one in terms of how we move forward. So I'm going to mix things up and go halfway to start. So why don't we try? Anybody else want to speak?
You guys fight.
I've got a question for you. I've got one question, so it's you've got easy there.
I take responsibility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually derailing the conversation is like one of my superpowers. So for this one, we put here in Scotland, we have an incredibly undemocratic structure. So whatever way you look at it, whether you look at land ownership or if you look at the way that our political representation is, So there are very systemic, fundamental elements. This came out a little bit of discussion about whether we should engage with political parties and to what end. So I think relating that back to this question was to ensure that PHM are focused on the systemic issues. In the UK, we are still under House of Lords. We still have a monarchy. We still have very clear. We're still a colonial. We're still a colonial force. So there is a need for us to own those, and for that to be part of our narrative, because too often we can be, there are many things that we want to sort out right now, but without facing up to those systemic issues and the legacy that of what a country like Scotland has done to the world and continues to do to the world, then we can't be an honest coalition with a global collective. Yeah, is that right? I mean, I'll put that. That kind of came out what we're saying.
Thanks, Mark. So question 3 about the role of PHM. Somebody else do you want to go, Eva?
When we talk about how could PHMS facilitate the coalition, we talk about vision, common values, facilitation of space for everyone. We also talk about local organizing, and we mentioned how to we talk about compromising, but it actually relates to the first point. How do you want to what do you want to from the health coalition? We also talk about justice, but I'm not sure. Yeah. So I think that's it.
Thanks very much. Okay, great. Thank you. Question 3. Somebody else want to have a? I think it's
Yeah, so we talked about how PHM Scotland is quite broad, so it would be a good facilitator because it could help groups that are more specified on certain issues, and it is quite well connected. And then we had a good discussion on talking about right to health as kind of a connecting concept, a connecting goal for all the groups in the coalition. But then I think just noting that what is the role of a facilitator? It's not going to be the same as the groups participating and adding to the coalition. So making sure that those are very distinct when setting it up. So if PHM Scotland is the facilitator, they're going to be different than the groups that are the coalition, and just holding that responsibility. And I think that is about it.
Thanks very much, Chris. Somebody here want to tackle question 3? Somebody else. It's blank, so that's the, you can say whatever you want then.
Notes.
One of you want to say something about PHM role? You're PHM activist, but you must have something.
I speak on my person, not on the group, so if I say something stupid, then it can turn against me. I would say that I find it interesting that PHM is the coalition, also because there are many interesting organizations, but there are many interesting individuals that want to organize in a group, maybe didn't find that group yet, and the power for me of PHM is literally bringing everyone together, the organizations, the grassroots activists, the academici, you name it. And that's why my personal opinion is that being the coalition and welcoming organizations and individuals is interesting.
Those are great ideas. So, two more groups. Somebody here want to say something? Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I'll do my best.
Didn't really write down what we just.
Okay, yeah, we had a little time to discuss this point, and we had a little bit of trouble pinpointing what was the culprit. But a theme we discussed about was the root question was, does it need to be PHM Scotland? And that is something that we discussed a bit about because PHM could be the coalition itself or a player in this coalition. But the role that PHM could have could be the one of facilitating processes by providing means, material, technical, maybe educational means to develop the process. And we didn't finish this. Can you trust me on a bit? Okay, I'll add a bit on this. I was about to tell it. It is not shared yet, so in case throw me something.
About it.
And the fact that this facilitation process could also imply that PHM could assume the role of assigning responsibilities or towards the process, or making sure everyone stays focused on developing a healthy process. Okay, and everyone takes responsibility on what they say and they bring it forward and contribute, not just saying things and then running away, you know?
Okay.
No
Thank you.
pressure, no pressure there.
No running away allowed, so that's a good message. Yeah. Joe.
I think more than kind of suggestions, we had kind of just open conversations about what that might look like, and talking about kind of the capacity of PHMS, and talking about whether the kind of conditions or the kind of potential consequences of going for things like funding, staffing, finding a holding organisation with more capacity would be a help or a hindrance to what the movement is trying to achieve. We also talked about the kind of connections with other networks and other organisations that maybe have similar, or working towards similar outcomes, but we have different approaches. And just being all whilst not necessarily kind of merging with them, making sure that there's always an awareness and a relationship with them, especially in a kind of Scottish context. You know, I was kind of thinking there's networks like Scottish Communities for Health and Wellbeing, which I've been in, and a lot of people in there weren't aware of PHMS and things like that. And obviously, they might have a very different approach, but they've got a lot of similar interests and are working towards similar things, albeit in different ways. And someone had already mentioned about having less meetings for meeting's sake, but we did also talk about having an accessible entry point, so people, some people were fairly new to PHMS, or this is their first time, knowing how to get involved in an ongoing way. So one person was saying, or the group was saying, maybe having a meeting regularly. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but knowing how you can be involved, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a meeting. But yeah, that's something.
How do you build a coalition without meeting?
Well, yeah, I suppose it's a meeting. It depends how you define meeting, I guess. But,
One has to meet, right? To bring a coalition together.
yeah.
It's important to meet. It's important to.
Well,
I wasn't against meetings, by the way.
I think we were debating between meeting and action. I mean, you can go on a demonstration together. It's quite a good way of coalition building. I wouldn't call that meeting, like the image Tony showed this morning of everybody outside stopping the deportations. That's not a meeting as such, but it's a gathering, it's a camp. So I think people.
How you define?
Yes.
That demonstration being an important part of your strategic direction and vision for the coalition, you have to meet. You have to think through. This demonstration is critical.
Well, it's interesting how sometimes how quickly activism can happen via social media or WhatsApp. You know, you can. And some of these demonstrations occurred in real time, in minutes, because they were aware this was happening, and they all went to stop the deportations. You know, and you didn't have a meeting to organise that; it just happened. Yeah.
I feel. I mean, we've written about that.
Yes.
Yes, but this social movement, the social media activism, I think there's been significant achievements, but it does not allow for building a movement. I think there are issues and pluses and minuses.
The organicity and sustainability need meetings, sorry. Yeah. No way to go around, yeah.
Well, that's the big debate of the day, meetings or not.
I feel like I took on the position of anti-meeting. That's not what I was trying to say there.
It's good to say we're finished on something really visionary as to whether to have a meeting or not. It's interesting. So we've been going for 2 hours. We thought we'd maybe have a 5-minute break before Sue brings all this together in a very creative and inspiring way in a few minutes. So let's have a 5-minute comfort break, and we'll come back at, I think, yeah, we'll come back at 22.